You're watching Newsfeed AM. Let's bring you up to speed with this story now. A recent International Monetary Fund has found that the July civil unrest, which rocked KZN and the Gauteng province, will have a significant economic impact on South Africa. Joining us now to discuss this particular report is analyst and director of Ubuntunomics, that's Sbu Nyathi, who talks to us all the way from Bisho in the Eastern Cape. Mr. Nyathi, thank you very much for your time. Just flesh out for us the key takeaway points from that IMF report on this recent unrest and the impact, the resultant impact it's going to have on the country's economy.
Thank you, Xoli, and I would like to extend my greetings to all your viewers. Basically, what is happening in South Africa is that we've had an economy that has been stagnant for a very long time. And the recent unrest, coupled with the coronavirus pandemic, have had a severe impact on the economy. We were expecting to grow by more than 4%, and now we will be, it looks highly likely that in the next quarter, at least, we'll be growing by only 3%. So you will remember that the economy has not been formulating enough. We've not been investing in capital formation. And so all of these niggles, the impacts severely on our economy here.
Yeah, and that, of course, the unrest that we saw last month, Sbu, it comes at a time when the country, when it goes to international markets to borrow money in order to make sure that this economy continues to function, the interest on those borrowing costs, they probably going to be significantly higher. What has the report said about that particular issue?
Basically, what usually happens when sovereign rating agencies rate our sovereign, when they rate us, 50% of that rating is made up of the political climate. And so if you have a bubbling of political unrest, because basically the unrest was due to mainly, I would say, socio-economic conditions, but precipitated by the arrest of Mr. Jacob Zuma. So what will happen is that when we go out to international capital markets, we might see in the next quarter a downgrade on our sovereign rating. But I'm not one who encourages borrowing internationally, borrowing in foreign currency. I would rather we borrowed locally, because South Africa has flush, very liquid capital markets, and I don't see why we keep going to the IMF for loans, because even though they might say that we will have favorable interest rates, the main thing to consider is the depreciation of the rand, of our local currency, because in the past 5 years the rand has depreciated by more than 20%. That is what you should be looking at, you should be honing in on, not lower interest rates externally.
Yeah. Interestingly, when we talk about borrowing monies, particularly from multilateral institutions, Sbu, the IMF itself, interestingly, is one of those institutions that we went to. And if you remember, I think it was in July last year, where it granted South Africa a loan of about $4.3 billion US. If you translate that to rand, it is 70 billion rand to be exact. And this was to try and support job creation in the country. So as much as the warning about the issue of unrest in the country that we're seeing, but they at the same time are smiling because that loan that they've given to us, they know that if the borrowing environment is not friendly to South Africa, it means that the interest that we're going to be paying back on that loan is going to be astronomical.
Precisely, and we should not have gone to the IMF in the first place because the IMF was set up to assist countries that have difficulties with their balance of payments, and we did not have such a problem. South Africa sits on about more than 850 billion rand in reserves, in gold and foreign currency reserves. So we do not have a balance of payments problem. So it puzzled most of us to see the South African, the previous finance minister going to the IMF for those loans. In fact, what the minister did in conjunction with the South African Reserve Bank governor, they wrote self-constricting. We actually, in a way, we constricted ourselves. We should not have gone to the IMF, basically.
And of course, the talk that always goes with borrowing from an institution like the IMF, Sbu, the constant refrain is that this may possibly compromise South Africa's fiscal sovereignty. Is that something that we should worry about? Because these fears, Tito Mboweni did try to allay them when this money was taken from the IMF.
Yes, the constriction I'm talking about is that concerning our deficits, our budget deficits, in the EU, they set a budget deficit of about 6%. You shouldn't go beyond 6%. And South Africa has, for the longest time, stuck with that EU model, wherein we did not go beyond 6%. And this time around, when the pandemic hit, we went to around about 10%, which is a great leap for us. So the IMF will have these restrictions on us. They will impose these restrictions to say we should not be investing in things like building schools or other social amenities. They will rather have us go into a severe austerity program, which we currently have. Just now, the Department of Police was saying that 11 billion rand was cut from their budget. So there are severe budget cuts in many departments, which impact on service delivery and our charting our way going forward.
Yeah. Finally, Sbu, let's talk about the environment in which we find ourselves. We're speaking on the back of events that took place last month, that unrest resulting in over 300 people losing their lives, but also economic devastation, particularly for the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Today, this morning, law enforcement is fanning out in the streets of South Africa, trying to make sure that nothing like that happens again. In fact, as I talk to you now, I'm beaming live visuals from Soweto, where law enforcement officers are doing the rounds there. How is that going to impact this condition of uncertainty about whether or not South Africa is politically unstable?
Well, they will not say to you, but just right after the unrest, the civil unrest, Citibank of the US issued a statement saying that they will not expose themselves to more South African debt, which is South African bonds, meaning there's an impact already on our bond markets. And in South Africa, during that unrest, I mean, we're talking about 150,000 jobs that were going to be lost after that unrest, and something like 50,000 informal traders were impacted, 40,000 businesses were impacted. All of this has a direct impact on capital formation in South Africa, on jobs most especially.
Sbu Nyathi, thank you very much for that insight. He is a director and analyst at Ubuntunomics, talking to us from Bisho in the Eastern Cape. Well, the slow and painful recovery, it continues with people who've lost their businesses to the unrest that we saw last week. Well,